Hello all, welcome to Tech with Sass. In this video, we are going to talk about two popular authentication mechanism. One is the session-based authentication, another is the JWT or JWT-based authentication mechanism, right? For the JWT token concept, like how it works and its structure, right? I had made a couple of videos in the past, so I will give the link in the description box. But I also try to explain basic concepts in my video later, so that we are able to refresh the main concept, right? So now let's start with the session-based authentication mechanism. So before we start with this, we have to first understand that what is authentication. So authentication is basically uh, verifying the client credentials before it can access resources or access the APIs of system, right? So normally, client is going to provide its credentials, maybe ID, passwords, by which a server is able to authenticate it, right? So that whatever claims are made by the client is verified that the claim what it made is the correct one, right? So basically, now let's understand the how session-based authentication works. So in this, the typical scenario we have taken that here we have a user, then we have a web application, and we have a server. So now, if a user want to access some resources on the server, or maybe want to run some APIs, right? So for that, first they have to prove their credentials, or they must be first. We have to authenticate them. So for that, the user has to provide their credentials, and those credentials are accessed by the server, and then it verifies in the backend, so that once we are able to validate the user that whatever the credentials they have provided are correct. So for the subsequent request, they don't need to provide any kind of ID password again and again. So for that, what we do, we create session, right? And that session will have something like session ID, time to live, and few more parameters, and those we persist into our data store. So data store might be any database, or might be that is cache, right? It depends upon your configuration, but the whole idea is that this whole session ID or session data we persist in some store, right? So that where we can refer it back. So now this whole conversation becomes stateful, because we are basically trying to persist session IDs and session, right? So that's why this whole conversation is stateful. Now, after the we are able to create session IDs and persist them into the database or cache, we send it back to the user. Now, user is able to get the session IDs. Session IDs basically it will store into its maybe cookies or in the browser, right, securely. So now, in any subsequent request, user need not to provide its own credentials. They must provide the session IDs in the request, maybe as a header or maybe as some parameters. Now, once a server gets the particular request, it will get the session ID as well, and it will verify that, right? Because whatever session ID we had given to the client, we can verify from the database, right? So from database, the we validate the session ID, and if it is correct, we are going to give access to the client for any resource or some response back to the user. So in a nutshell, we can say that at first interaction with the system, User is providing its credentials, and then once server is able to authenticate the user, we create the session IDs and some other parameters, and we persist it in the database or the caching store. So next time onwards, user only needs to provide session IDs, and based on that, we can verify the user and they're able to access our resources, right? So this is basically a stateful kind of a interaction, because we have to maintain the state of the conversation. So now let's understand the few features of session-based authentication. Yeah, so first thing which is very evident from our conversation or like our discussion, that it requires a separate storage for the session data, right? So whatever session IDs and other data is created, we have to persist it somewhere. So it means that we must have the storage mechanism in this kind of a framework. Now, second thing is the how we can basically invalidate the session IDs. For example, uh, if user suspects that his session or maybe browser system was hacked, right? And somebody might have got their session IDs, which they can utilize and maybe impersonate the user. So it is very easy to, I mean, remove that, or we can just delete the entries of session IDs from the database, right? So, so we can invalidate the session IDs very easily in this kind of a framework. And third thing is that scaling, right? So what is scaling? It is basically we are able to serve more and more requests, right? So by adding more infrastructure to our system, but because we have database, right, which is required for every request, right, for verification of the session IDs. So it is not very easy to scale, right? So this is like a whole concept of session-based authentication. I hope it is clear. Now, there is a problem, right? Suppose your application is distributed, and you have multiple servers which are serving the users, right? So at that time, so every request coming to a server, they must connect with the session store or database, right, to validate the session IDs. So this might cause some kind of latency or delays. So we have to keep in mind while choosing which mechanism is fit for a purpose, right? So, in this session-based authentication, there might be some kind of challenges in terms of latency, in terms of scaling, right? So now let's understand the what is the JWT-based authentication. So we will take the same scenario like what we had taken in the case of session-based authentication. Here we have a user, we have a application, we have a server, right? And same way, user first need to verify its identity. So user will provide its credentials to the application or the server. Server is going to verify and validate the credentials. And once user is authenticated, it is going to create the JWT token and sign it, right? So here you can see that there is no database or caching store, right? Once server is able to authenticate the user, it is going to create a JSON web token or JWT token and sign it with some kind of a secret key. Okay, so secret key is used to basically encrypt the JWT token, so that during the transportation over the wire, it is not it remains secure. Nobody is able to guess that, right? So now, user will get the JWT token from the server, and here you can see that we are not persisting this token anywhere in the system. It means that whatever conversation we are doing with the in this system, right, is stateless, because every request is like a new request, right? So in subsequent request, what happens that user will have to send the JWT token back to the server. Now server is able to validate this particular token because it has the secret private key, and based on that it is able to verify that, right? So this is how the JWT based authentication works. So now we want to remember the difference between both of these mechanism. So let's see one by one. So here, right? So we see that in this particular framework or mechanism, there is no storage required. Okay, but in session based, we had to use a database or maybe caching store. Now, whatever the JWT token we have issued, it is not very easy to make it invalid because there you had database, so you go and delete the entry from database. Now you get rid of that, right? But here in this scenario, you cannot easily invalidate the JWT token, but there are some mechanisms I will let you know. And why we need to invalidate to maybe you want to make it more secure that nobody is able to even if they get the key, maybe they stole your JWT key, they you'll expire very soon. So normally JWT tokens are very short lived, right? So they will not be available for long. You need to refresh them frequently. And third thing is scaling. So scaling is easy because there is no database involved. So the scaling is very easy, right? So now if you at this moment, if you want to compare both mechanism and want to memorize or understand the critical important concept between them. So in session based authentication, the storage is required, but in JWT it is not. In the addition of key is very easy in session, but in JWT is bit typical or not that easy. Scaling is very easy compared to the session based in JWT based authentication, right? So these are the three key points, right, which we must remember for any interview we attend. So now we talk about the secret key, right? Secret key, right? So we have some algorithms which are utilized to create the encrypted JWT token. So like few of them are the HMAC, RSA, or ECDSA, right? So HMAC is a mechanism which is symmetric in nature. It means that the same key is utilized for the encryption of the string and also for the decryption. So it is quite simple in terms of the how we implement it. So in case your application is in-house application is not going to interact with any third-party applications or APIs, you can utilize this HMAC algorithm without any doubt, right? But suppose you have outside vendor calls or like you have to also go via internet, right? So you should use the RSA or ECDSA algorithm because these uses the asymmetric encryption. It means that whatever the keys to encrypt data and decrypt data are different keys, right? So it is like more secure. Now let's address the question that how we can basically invalidate the JWT token, which is very critical, right? Because if your token is stolen, somebody can utilize your JWT token and impersonate your login, and they can do whatever you should be able to do, right? So so there's a mechanism, right? We have a called refresh token. So I mean there are two tokens basically. One is the access token, which is just the JWT token only, right? So JWT token is also called the access token, which is a very short-lived token, maybe a few minutes. Okay. I mean, it depends upon your application configuration. You can change that, but in general, it is short-lived token. Another is the refresh token. So refresh token is also issued at the time you get JWT token from system. And what it does, it basically, so as we know that JWT token is short-lived, so whenever your JWT token expires, or if you want to basically refresh the access token because you suspect that your token is stolen, you call the auth server using this refresh token. So it because what happens that refresh token is kind of they store in the database or maybe in some backend, right? So by that they are able to authenticate you without your credentials. So once you are authenticated using the refresh token, they issue you a new access token or JWT token which you can utilize further. Okay. Let's understand this by this workflow. So here we have a user, we have a auth server, a resource server, right? So auth server is the server which is generating the JWT token, right? And refresh token. And then resource server is the server which has resources in for which user is interested, right? To access upon. So generally at first time, right, when user was authenticated, user will be issued two tokens. One is the access token, another is refresh token, right? So now if your access token is expired, then user is going to request to auth server with the refresh token. Now auth server will verify in the database or in the backend logic that okay, whatever refresh token I have received from the user is correct. So if it's correct, then it is going to give you a new access token, right? Then, with that new access token, you are going to call the resource server that, okay, resource server, I have got a valid new access token. Give me access to these particular resources. So now you are able to access that resource server, right? So this is how it works. So basically, just remember these two things. Like at first, right, whenever user is authenticated, user receives two tokens. One is the access token, which is short-lived, and second is the refresh token. Whenever access token expires, or user want to refresh the access token voluntarily, then they can pass this token and to get the new access token, right? So this is a very important concept for this particular case. So I have covered both these mechanisms, and also we have seen uh, the uh, uh, the key differences that you should remember for your interview questions or maybe for in your project, right? So what differences you have? So that is the main thing, right? So, but now, based upon your requirement, whether you for you if scaling is important or not, whether you can afford a full-fledged database or not. I mean, based on your requirements, you can choose either session-based or the JAWT-based authentication. So, I hope my video was useful to you. If there are any questions or any comments, kindly put in the comments so that I will reply to you for definitely. And if you like my videos, kindly like, comment, share with your techie friends. Thank you very much. Thanks.